Hey there, it is Christina here, and we are talking about emotional eating today. So if you have been on several diets in the past and been able to lose weight but have struggled to keep the weight off, then this topic is definitely going to be for you. So we're in part 2 of my 4-part series on emotional eating, and my goal is to really just help you figure out if emotional eating is one of the factors why it's been hard for you to lose weight and keep it off. And so that's what we're focusing on in part 1 and part 2 of the series. And then part 3 and part 4, we'll start talking about some more practical strategies to be able to start cutting back on the amount of emotional eating you're doing. So what I have discovered in my years of working with women on losing weight is that for most people, they often don't consider themselves to really be an emotional eater, or they don't recognize how often emotional eating is actually happening for them. And I think the reason for that is we don't truly have a really good idea of what it actually looks like to be emotionally eating. And so that's what I really want to talk about to help you figure out what role it's playing in your weight loss journey. And so today we're going to focus on the most common emotions and feelings that lead to emotional eating. So I've got 7 different common categories of emotions that I'll share with you. And then we're going to look at 5 different specific types of emotional eaters so you can kind of see which ones you relate to the most. And so the goal is to just help you become more aware of how emotional eating is showing up for you, because once you become aware of it, it's so much easier to start addressing it, to start eating when you're physically hungry so that you can lose weight more easily. So if we haven't met yet, just really quick, I'm Christina Johnson. I'm a transformational nutrition coach, and I specialize in working with women who have struggled usually for years with dieting and with weight and just with their relationship with food. And so what I do is I help people lose weight by developing a clean eating lifestyle and also a better relationship with food. So let's dive right in, but I am curious if you're watching, whether live or on the replay, I'd love to know what emotions or feelings do you think trigger you to eat emotionally? So what are the triggers for you for eating? And I'm gonna pull it up here so I can see on my computer so I can see your comments more easily. So let me know, what is it that triggers emotional eating for you if you have an idea? And you might also want to grab a pen and paper to take a few notes. I think that especially as I'm going over the different types of emotional eaters, you might just want to jot down what these are so that you can refer back to them throughout the week. Hey Devorah, good to see you here. All right, so if you have not watched part 1, you might want to go back and do that. You can watch it after this video. But in part 1, I talked about how there's 2 types of eating. We can eat because we're physically hungry and we choose good, healthy food that fuels our body, gives our body what it needs for energy. And then we have all the other times where we just want to eat. And so that's what we're dealing with, is we're dealing with all those other times where we want to eat, where something sounds good, we're eating out of habit, boredom, stress, and we really want to figure out how do we eat for fuel 90% of the time. So what we need to realize is that our cravings mean something. When you are craving a food, when you are wanting to eat, even though you're not actually physically hungry, that means something. And typically we overeat because there's some kind of emotion that we're just not wanting to deal with. We're wanting to avoid or numb out. And I mean, research has showed this, that most people who overeat or who are chronic dieters are using food to deal with their emotions in some way. And so it's a really important piece of losing weight that we have to take into account and to address. Because if we deal with the underlying emotional reasons for wanting to eat, then the cravings start to go away. We stop overeating as often, and it's so much easier to lose weight and keep it off. Yeah, thanks, Devorah. So sadness, loneliness, and grief. Those are really common triggers for wanting to turn to food. So let's look at, there's 7 different kind of categories of emotions that often trigger wanting to eat. So I'd love to know which ones of these you can relate to the most as we go through. So the first one is feeling that stress, tension, anxiety, irritability, frustration. I mean, I think we can all know that state of mind. So I mean, just think about those situations where you just feel on edge or stressed or tense. It's really common to want to overeat in those situations to just help us feel a little more calm, to take the edge off. So that would be one situation. Number two would be when we're feeling, kind of like Devorah said here, times when we're feeling sad or feeling grief, maybe feeling a little down or even depressed. Those are often times where we turn to food to help us feel better, to comfort us, and to kind of pick us up. I mean, how often have you like just been sad about something? It's like, oh, you just really want some ice cream or something to make you feel better. Okay, the third category of emotion is when we're feeling tired. I mean, how many of us, like mid-afternoon slump, we're starting to feel a little bit of an energy low or crashing feeling. We're feeling tired. We're tired of being at our desk working, and we just want to eat something to kind of give us a little boost of energy or to pick us up or to get us through the rest of the day. So I think we don't always consider that a form of emotional eating. But eating to change our emotional state, to change from feeling tired to feeling better and perked up, I mean, that is a form of emotional eating as well. Okay, number 4. This is one that I think we don't often consider as a part of emotional eating. But if we just have this like unmet need in our life where we're not feeling like we're having fun, we're not feeling like we're getting to do things that are like playful or adventurous or exciting, that lack of fun, excitement, adventure, that will cause us to turn to food to give us a sense of fun or entertainment or joy or pleasure. So that unmet need for fun or adventure is definitely a reason why a lot of people turn to food, but I don't think we always consider that one. Okay. Number 5, the 5th category, is having a desire for love, for affection, for being appreciated. So when we have this unmet need in our life, when we're not really feeling connected to another person or feeling like we have that support from in a relationship, when we're feeling just like not appreciated, when something feels missing in that area of love and relationships, I mean, that often will lead to wanting to turn to food. Oftentimes in that situation, a lot of people go to chocolate. So if you're often craving chocolate, you might just want to ask yourself, are you feeling like love and support and connection in your life? And again, it's not necessarily like right now I'm feeling not loved and so I turn to food, but it's more like this pervasive feeling like I'm just not getting that need met overall. Maybe it's love from other people, or maybe it's not loving ourselves, like feeling a lack of self-love, self-worth. That could also cause that. Okay, number 6 is what we're on now. And this is those times when we're feeling anger. So if you're feeling anger towards other people or towards yourself, maybe you're feeling resentment or bitterness towards other people. Maybe it's just maybe a feeling of like frustration. That anger, that frustration, that resentment, I mean, we often try to soothe that through food. Oftentimes that kind of situation leads to wanting something crunchy, where we can just like almost like chew our way like to feeling better. Stress, tension, and anger both often are times where we want more crunchy types of foods. And then lastly, number 7 is just kind of a feeling of emptiness, or maybe insecurities where maybe we don't feel like we don't have our self-worth. We don't feel like we're enough. We're not doing good enough. We're not measuring up. We've got a lot of negative self-talk in our head. And oftentimes then we turn to food just to like make ourselves feel better or to feel comforted because we don't want to deal with those emotions. So those are 7 different categories of times when people often turn to food. So I'd love to hear which ones of those that you relate to the most. I see Devorah said tired of cooking. Yes. Or getting a meal and will eat anything. Yeah, that's a good point to that category of feeling tired. Sometimes it is just being like mentally, emotionally tired of having to plan and prepare food and cook and eat healthy. So that can be another situation where it's an emotion. It's not wanting to cook or to plan or prepare that's fueling us to just choose something that's quick and easy and maybe not healthy. So those are just different situations, different underlying reasons that cause us to want to eat when we're not actually physically hungry, or cause us to want maybe not the healthiest of choices. Okay. So let's move on and let's take a look at 5 different specific types of emotional eaters. This is based on the work of Doreen Virtue. I've got her book here. It's a book I read a long time ago. I pulled it out as I was kind of reviewing and refreshing my mind on some of this stuff. But she has worked with initially she started her career as, I think, a psychotherapist for people with different addictions like drugs and alcohol, and then she started moving into the realm of food. And so she's identified 5 different types of emotional eaters, and it's just interesting because I've worked with lots of people in my private coaching practice and have had the opportunity to really see all these different types of people in action, and I myself can identify with 1 or 2 of them as well. So let's take a look at the 5 types of emotional eaters. As I go, let me know if you have questions, put them in the comments, whether it's live or on the replay, or let me know which ones you relate to. So number 1 is the binge eater. And so the binge eater, we kind of all know what this one is, and we know whether we are a binge eater or not. Just a couple side notes on this one. Typically for binge eaters, there's a couple foods in particular that are trigger foods. And so those are the foods typically that have like sugar or flour in them. Those are the ones that are more likely to be binge foods. And what happens is that when we are binging on foods, it keeps a lid on our emotions. And so once we stop binging, once we stop eating our trigger foods, that lid opens and the emotions come to the surface. This really happens with any form of emotional eating. So we have to deal with those emotions, otherwise we'll just go back to food. So that's the first type of emotional eater. The second one is the mood eater, and I think this one maybe is what we often associate with emotional eating, but the mood eater overeats in response to strong emotions. So it's that person who's just feeling a lot of emotion and they just want to eat to maybe not feel so much, to avoid it, or just to feel better in some way. And oftentimes the mood eater is a person who is, a little bit more of a sensitive person, sensitive to other people's needs, to other people's feelings and emotions. Usually this type of eater is a very compassionate person, one who is very empathic, understands other people, and often are in like helping roles or positions, nurturing type of roles, whether it's as a mother, a teacher, a nurse, a counselor. And so these people often are very sensitive to other people's emotions and can take on things that other people are going through. And so then other people's emotions feel so heavy that then for themselves, they often don't have the emotional capacity to even deal with their own emotions. And just personally, this is something that I've realized about myself, especially over just the last 6 months or so, is that even though I am very in touch with the idea of emotions and can help people all day long with their emotions, I don't always want to deal with it myself. And realizing that I don't always feel like I have the capacity to deal with my own when I'm helping other people with theirs. And so then what happens is that instead of like having to deal with all these emotions, then it's easier just to eat, to turn to food to help us to feel better, to feel happier, or to numb out from those emotions. Okay, number 3, the third type of eater is a self-esteem eater. Excuse me. So this is someone who uses food as a friend. Like they view food as a friend, as a companion, as someone who's like there for them. And oftentimes the self-esteem eater is not like feeling fully confident in themselves. There's maybe different insecurities, or they don't feel like they're enough. They're not doing enough. They're not good enough. They're not worthy. And so also, because of that, sometimes there's conflicts in their like interpersonal relationships. So maybe they have felt like hurt by other people, rejected, let down, misunderstood by other people. And so it kind of all fuels together. So there's that just lack of not feeling great about themselves. And so food is just this constant. It's a friend. And I've had many people tell me they feel like food is their friend. And so when you try to take away food without dealing with that underlying reason, it leaves a void, especially if you're feeling like you're just not understood by people, or you're hurt or let down by people. And so that is the third type of eater, the self-esteem eater, just feeling like that lack of confidence, self-worth, like, and some insecurities that fuels eating. Number 4 is a stress eater. So I think a lot of people can relate to this one. I've had a lot of people tell me, yes, I'm a stress eater. And I think that there's often 2 main reasons why people eat for stress. One, it's some kind of unhappiness in their work life, or maybe unhappiness and lack of work life. Maybe you are not working right now. Maybe you're, for whatever reason, you're not working and you're feeling like unfulfilled in that area. Or maybe you are in a job that you don't enjoy, that doesn't fuel you, or you're in a job that just is so draining on you. So some kind of unhappiness or discontent in work life can lead to tension and stress. Or another big area of stress eating is some kind of dissatisfaction or tension in relationships, whether that's like with a partner, a spouse, maybe it's just like social relationships in general. But because the thing is, to make changes in our work life or in our relationships, those aren't simple things to change. It takes time. And so that can cause this buildup of stress and frustration and tension, anxiety, and that often leads to just wanting to eat, to not have to deal with it. And there are definitely other areas and things that cause stress, but work and relationships tend to be 2 really big ones. And I will say too, overall, for stress eaters, I feel like I have been a stress eater at times in my life, but the stress eaters tend to have a variety of cravings. So oftentimes, for example, like with a binge eater, there's, like a couple trigger foods. With stress eaters, maybe sometimes it's like wanting a glass of wine to unwind. Sometimes it's, wanting something creamy like ice cream. Sometimes it's wanting crackers to chomp on. So stress eaters tend to be not as selective in the types of food they crave. There's like several different things. Okay, and then number 5 is the snowball effect eater. So I'm curious if anyone relates to this one. But the snowball effect eater is that person whose determination and motivation to stick with eating healthy, to stick with exercising, to stick with other healthy eating habit or health habits. That determination, that motivation can vary from day to day or week to week. So for example, this might be a person who, like, you see a picture of yourself or your jeans don't button up in the morning and you're like, oh, I've got to do something about this today. So something happens, you feel really motivated to make changes. And so oftentimes this type of person like jumps all in. You will cut out all the sugar, all the gluten, all the dairy, like whatever it is, you're going to make all these changes. You're really motivated and determined, but then it's your birthday, or then it's the Super Bowl, and you decide, well, I'm just gonna have 1 glass of wine and 1 piece of cake. But then that one disruption in your healthy eating plan causes a snowball. So that one thing leads to another, and that snowball just gets bigger and bigger, and before you know it, you're in this place where it's like, I don't care anymore about losing weight. I don't even care anymore about eating healthy, because it just feels like it's gotten so far out of control. So that is the 5th one. So I'm curious, let me know in the comments again, whether you're live or watching the replay, which, if any of these, do you relate to? So quick recap, we had the binge eater, we had the mood eater, self-esteem eater, stress eater, and the snowball effect eater. And like I said, I've definitely, I've seen myself. Mood eater is probably the one that I relate to the most, but I think for all of us, there's times where we can pick up bits and pieces of each of them. And so the reason why I wanted to share this with you today is because when we do not deal with the underlying reasons why we want to eat, then we're always going to continue to struggle with avoiding those foods, those trigger foods, those tempting foods. And it's going to feel so much more difficult to eating clean and sticking with it. So here's my challenge or my action item for you this week is just to pay close attention. Anytime you're wanting to eat and you're not actually physically hungry, what emotions might be there for you? Is it a feeling of just discontent? Is it feeling not loved or appreciated? Is it feeling stress? Is it feeling like you're just kind of bored, like there's not enough fun or excitement in your life? So you might even want to go back and listen to those different categories again and just really reflect over the next week on which ones might be fueling this like underlying motivation for wanting to turn to food to make you feel better or to numb out or, whatever the case may be for you. And, because I truly believe that in order to lose weight and keep it off, we have to deal with these underlying reasons why we want to eat. And what I've seen in my experience, and I'm guessing you probably have too, is that there are a lot of diets and programs out there that focus on telling you what to eat, right? Like there's Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig, Slim Fast, Counting Calories, Mediterranean. All of these programs are telling you what to eat or how much to eat, which is important. But then on the other spectrum, we have these programs that are focused just on emotional eating, like just improving your relationship with food. And what I really believe is most effective is when we can fuse those two types of programs together, which is what I do in my work, because we do need to work on figuring out how do you eat in a way that keeps your blood sugar stable so that the cravings reduce, so that your hunger hormones are not out of control, so that you feel more in control of your eating habits and you're feeling full and satisfied. So we definitely need to work on what to eat to make all those things happen. But then we also have to deal with the reasons why we eat. Because as I mentioned before, when you cut out sugar, when you're not having a glass of wine every night, when you're not going for the chips or the crackers all the time, what happens is when we don't turn to food, the lid is open and all these emotions start coming to the surface. We start feeling more stress. We start feeling more discontent. We start feeling more underappreciated. And when we aren't dealing with that, what's easiest to do is to just shut the lid back, put the lid back on, and just turn back to food. And so to really be able to lose weight and maintain that weight loss long term, we have to look at those things that are coming up and figure out another way to deal with them other than turning to food. And to be honest, like that's not always the most comfortable choice to make. It's so much easier to just eat the sugar or the chocolate, the wine, whatever it is. But I promise you that on the other side of it, there's just so much more freedom. You feel happier, you feel more in control around food, and you realize that it's not as hard as we think to deal with our emotions. That is a huge lesson I've learned personally over the last 6 months. All of the stress, the anxiety, the worry, the fears that I've been avoiding, it's so much easier to deal with when I just deal with it in the moment, and it really truly is always, I'm making it bigger in my head than what it is in reality. So those are just my thoughts on that. We will continue to go on in this emotional eating series over the next couple of weeks, but if you feel like you could benefit from this approach to learning how to eat to balance your blood sugar and get rid of cravings, but then also working on the reasons why you eat, then I would love to chat with you and just brainstorm some ways how I could help you really reduce the amount of emotional eating that you're doing so that you can lose weight and keep it off for good. So if you are interested in that, I will put a link in the comments. It's just ChristinaJohnsonWellness.com/apply. And just you'll answer a couple of questions to give me a little background information about you, and then find a time to chat. We'll talk for a little bit, and I will just get a better sense of what you're struggling with and how I might be able to help you move forward and get the results that you so badly deserve. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will come back and check on these later. If you're watching this on the replay on YouTube, feel free to join my free Facebook group so that you can finish watching the rest of the series live and also get healthy recipes, healthy challenges, all kinds of things that we do in the Facebook group. So I will put the link to that in the comments as well. So thank you so much for watching until the end. If you have anything that you need or have questions, feel free to reach out, and I hope that we get a chance to talk soon. Bye for now.